Hey guys, Chris from the Tiger's Den, and I want to talk about some Link's Awakening. So first I want to apologize. Ben and I did LionCon, local convention for tabletop, video games, pretty much everything. Here in Minnesota, I'm a little sick. So if I'm heavy breathing or seem congested, I am. But regardless, let's talk about Link's Awakening. So, little history for me. Link's Awakening is actually the first Zelda game that I played back on the Game Boy when I was a child. And now it is being re-released for the Switch. The Switch actually kind of got me back into video games, and by got me back into video games, I mean like I've owned every recent Sony system, but I have not played every single game. And when I say it got me back in, it has games that I can share with my 4-year-old son, this being one of them. I want to start with the positives. Normally, I end with the positives, and I am going to end with a positive. So I'm going to start with the positives of the game as I have seen them. One, I'll say it, I was right. If you said this art style looked terrible, you were wrong. The same people that crapped all over Wind Waker were likely the same people crapping over this style. I'm just going to tell you this. This is better than Ocarina of Time. This style. This style is better than Majora's Mask. It's better than Skyward Sword. It's better than Twilight Princess. Why? Well, for the same reason that Wind Waker was. Okay? This ages better. It ages better and it looks great now. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This looks better than those games. They did manage to clean up the inventory system, so I no longer need to constantly drop into my inventory and swap what items I need. I appreciate that. So that's a positive. Overall, the game feels pretty smooth. There were some frame drop issues in a few areas where the game felt like it literally dropped, or plummeted, I guess would actually be the word, from 60 to 30 FPS. I mean, I very rarely, A, on a Nintendo system, but B, in any recent game, have I felt a frame rate drop like that without there just being a serious issue in the game's design. What concerns me is that the game's been out for not a week, obviously, but the game's been out long enough, and these issues were, according to 2 journalists, present at E3. So they've had enough time with this game to fix it if they could, or if they were going to. And so that actually makes me sad, and it leads me to believe that this frame rate issue is here to stay. And I guess while I'm talking about frame rate, we've arrived at cons. Now, I gave you a bunch of the really cool things, and I'll tell you one more pro. And that's that Link's Awakening is a big swing for the fences. It is. They took a lot of risks, and they did a lot of things in the game that were not traditional. You know, whether it is the first or the Zelda game that doesn't take place in Hyrule, whether it's not having Zelda in it, and she's replaced with arguably much better singer and songwriter, Marin. You know, you've got a lot of crazy stuff. I'm not going to talk about all the other Nintendo characters that made it in the game, because I don't think that's risky or even neat. It's But I will say, the story beats and the humor, everything is just off-kilter compared to the normal Zelda story. And I think that's to the game's benefit, as well as the players. Now we're going to get into cons, because I have a lot of them, okay? So, first I'm going to start with, this is a Game Boy game. I know you're going to watch this and you're going to tell me, Chris, it's not a Game Boy game. They've redesigned the entire thing from the ground up, and it's made for the Switch. But here's the thing. According to people at Nintendo, it seems like this project was kind of started not for the Switch. And while I understand that, and I'm okay with the fact that it's a remake of an old game, this kind of goes into the Final Fantasy VII, the Xenoblade, like games like that. This goes into that conversation, Where Final Fantasy VII isn't just we slapped a whole new art style on it and cleaned up the menu system. It's literally a top-down redesign with a bunch of stuff added to it. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, but Chris, they're planting the seeds for Zelda Maker. Because they added a dungeon maker in here that you can make dungeons for yourself to play through. Because there's no online support. And who really owns amiibos? You know? But at the end of the day, this is a Game Boy game. So the length of play here is a Game Boy game's length of play. The world map size is a Game Boy's world map size. And something that's really interesting is I had heard before the game came out that because it was on the Switch, I would not be transitioning screens the way I did in, say, the Game Boy version. Aha. Yes, you do. There are multiple times during this game where you will transition from screen to screen the exact way you did on the Game Boy. So I don't want to hear it. It still happens. It's just not every time. But it's still present. The game has ridiculous mini-games. Yes, I'm going to say it. Breath of the Wild included things like cooking and whatnot, but these weren't mini games to be like, oh, look, cooking, let's have a cook-off. No. These were things that were necessary mechanisms for the game to function the way the designers wanted it. I'm confused as to why this game, other than the limitation of, in fact, being a Game Boy game, needed to have things like the, secret seashells and a heart piece and a Yoshi doll locked behind a crane game. Baffles me. And so that leads me to the price, and I think the problem that Nintendo has created for themselves. And, I don't care how positive you look through your nostalgia goggles at this game, it's $60. So the problem that Nintendo's created for themselves is if I'm going to the store and I've just gotten myself a Switch, I'm going to be looking at Breath of the Wild, and then next to it I'm going to be looking at Zelda Link's Awakening. One of these games has 100-ish plus hours of content to womp my way through, and modern design mechanisms. The other is a shot-for-shot remake of a game from like 1993, with, yes, better graphics. Which do I want? The 10 hours or the 100 hours? And that really is my principal problem with it, is that unlike Final Fantasy VII, unlike certain other remakes, this is, I don't even know if I can call it a remake. It's not an HD remaster. It's like this weird gray area in between. I mean, yes, in a technical sense, this is a remake. But the menu system, by the way, still as antiquated now as it felt in 1993. Still as antiquated. It's serviceable, but not great. You would think if you were remaking the game visually from the ground up, you would take some time to clean up your menus. Hell, you refreshed the map. That now looks cool. You couldn't do the same to the inventory system? You thought fans were just begging for that 1993 inventory system all over again? You're like, it's cool. We made it so you don't have to keep going in and out to pick items. So we don't need to revamp the inventory system. Well, you could have. You could have. But that does lead me to the final positive, okay? This game, for me, is in a weird spot. It's in a weird spot because I too have nostalgia goggles on, and being able to share with my 4-year-old son the very first Zelda that I played, The same way that NES and the SNES on the Nintendo Switch have allowed me to share with him the first Mario games and just games in general that I played. Nintendo gave me something really special by doing that. Now, I know this isn't the Game Boy version, and I'm not really a game collector, so I don't keep games after the generation is over. I don't revisit games because I run a business, and I have things outside of just the games themselves, you know. I'm not a collector. So being able to share this remake of the first Zelda I ever played with my 4-year-old is really cool. And it's really awesome to see him get excited for it and light up the way I did when I was a kid getting to play this game. So for that, absolutely this was worth it. Now, as a more discerning consumer, if I didn't have those nostalgia goggles, it would take a hell of a lot more to get me to spend $60 on this title. And I'm not saying, hey, let's compare it to Breath of the Wild, because that's almost an unfair comparison to make for most games. But even stacking this game up against Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, I'm removing Breath of the Wild here. I'm comparing it to all those games. Even Astral Chain and its limited 20 to 25 hour story if you stretch it. Like, even that, I find it hard to rationalize Nintendo's every game has to be $60 mentality. And so, for that, I'm going to say, yeah, if I didn't have a 4-year-old son who I wanted to share my first Zelda experience with, I wouldn't have purchased this at $60. I would have used a friend's copy, or I would have watched gameplay and just been kindly reminded of years past and past this title. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Zelda Link's Awakening. It is a mixed bag for me. A mixed bag is probably the best way I can put it. There are a lot of really good things about this game, and there are a lot of things I'm not such a huge fan of. Would I own it, like I said, if I didn't have my son? Probably not, actually. Probably not at all. But that's just one man's opinion. I've been Chris, this has been the Tiger's Den, and you guys have been fantastic. Thanks for joining me for just like another thoughts on a game or review. More videos on the channel. Ben's going to be in Nova Scotia, but he'll still have Magic the Gathering the Arena, and I will still have gaming videos out this week. So if this is the kind of stuff you like, please leave a like, hit the subscribe button, let us know how we're doing. New mic, new cameras, new everything. We are working on improving the channel, so thank you guys for sticking with it, giving it a shot.